Our scripture reading this morning comes from the Gospel according to Luke in the 19th chapter. After Jesus had said this, he went on ahead, going up to Jerusalem. When he had come near Bethphage and Bethany, at the place called the Mount of Olives, he sent two of the disciples, saying, "Go into the village ahead of you, and as you enter it, you will find tied there a colt that has never been ridden. Untie it and bring it here. If anyone asks you, 'Why are you untying it?' just say this, 'The Lord needs it.'" So those who were sent departed and found it as he had told them. As they were untying the colt, its owners asked them, "Why are you untying the colt?" They said, "The Lord needs it." Then they brought it to Jesus, and after throwing their cloaks on the colt, they set Jesus on it. As he rode along, people kept spreading their cloaks on the road. Now, as he was approaching the path down from the Mount of Olives, the whole multitude of the disciples began to praise God joyfully with a loud voice for all the deeds of power that they had seen, saying, "Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord. Peace in heaven and glory in the highest heaven." Some of the Pharisees in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, order your disciples to stop." He answered, "I tell you, if these were silent, the stones would shout out." As he came near and saw the city, he wept over it, saying, "If you, even you, had only recognized on this day the things that make for peace. But now they are hidden from your eyes." May these ancient words lead us through this holiest of weeks.
Some months ago, I sat down with a couple excited to get married, and the bride was especially looking forward to her grandmother flying in to meet fiancé about a month prior to the wedding. But of course, Grandma had to be coached. "Grandma, I have one rule. When you are at dinner with my fiancé, whatever you do, no politics or religion. For politics mixed with religion can be a most uncomfortable spot. And therein is where Palm Sunday throws us. On to the day of the Christian year when we use decidedly political language to talk about Jesus. King above all kings, Prince of peace, Lord of lords, kingdom. But before you get too nervous with politics and religion this morning, I would share back with you that the kind of politics that I'm about ready to share is very, very different from the one that I follow on my phone or on television. In fact, you might say it's out of this world. The triumphal entry, some 2,000 plus years ago, as Jesus walked along the road into the capital city of Jerusalem. The great Jewish historian Josephus recalled that there may have been more than 2 million people lining the streets, a political rally like none you have ever seen. For what it was that the Jewish population wanted in that moment was for a king to come, a Jewish version of a Roman king who would come and protect them against all enemies. You know, a king who, embodying violence with force, would protect the people. A king who, like every other king they knew, would also promise prosperity. A four-star general, if you will, riding on a war horse like the ones that we read about in the book of Revelation. And here he comes into Jerusalem, not only bringing forth security, but also promising some kind of wonderful financial end result where maybe the streets would be paved with gold and the buildings constructed of marble. And here he comes. It is time for the king to arrive. Rejoice. A poor 33-year-old carpenter shows up riding on a donkey. He did not fit within their political expectations. Jesus didn't fit the bill. And when Jesus did not deliver on the population's political expectations, that same crowd that was rejoicing would just a few days later shout, "Crucify him, crucify him." Jesus, King above all kings, was bringing forth a peace, a love, and a joy, as well as the kingdom of heaven on earth. And it was glorious, but the people, they couldn't see it. It was hidden from their eyes. Jesus remarked, "I weep because the things of peace, you can't see them." Elaine Pagels, a Princeton scholar, refers to Jesus' weeping in this moment as anticipatory grief. She argues that Jesus has the diagnosis. Jesus knows what will bring them peace. Jesus knows the kind of kingdom that will bring fulfillment into their lives. But the people can't see it. It was hidden from their eyes. Which begs the question, why? Why was it hidden from their eyes? Well, it was none other than the politics and politicians of their world. Christian author Kate Bowler on her podcast described it this way. She said, "You have to remember that Jesus was coming into Jerusalem from the east and Pilate was coming in processing from the west. And really what you have in the triumphal entry is two kingdoms in collision. One kingdom that is defined by servant leadership, another kingdom that's defined by power. The virtues of the two kingdoms are very, very different. One is defined by a donkey, the other by a war horse. And really what you have happening here is many people lining the streets of Jerusalem and expecting, anticipating, wanting Jesus to be the same kind of liberator that the Romans had always known over the course of their lives, but he wasn't. Jesus was hidden from their eyes. Friends, I cannot imagine a biblical text on Palm Sunday of 2025 that quite connects to our lives like this one. For here we are on the day of the Christian year when we claim Jesus as the King above all kings, but it can be so hidden from our eyes as well. Hidden from our eyes as we navigate the politics and politicians of our world. For example, just a few weeks ago, I heard the story of a father and a daughter. One was glued to CNN, the other was glued to Fox. And after 14 months, they still have not spoken with one another. No longer glued together. I heard the story of the Condominium Association in Naples, who this past season decided to cancel their gatherings in the social room of the condominium because the political strife was just too much. I heard the story of the church up in the Northeast where one political party got angry and left, and now the church is in shambles trying to figure out how to go forward. I speak with my kids at home, many of whom will talk about their lunchroom conversations and the political terms that get brought up. And I never in a million years thought that I would have to unpack some of those terms to, yes, my 9-year-old. An article I was reading just the other day pointed out a really interesting statistic from Pew Research. 80% of Democrats in this country do not have one good friend who is a Republican, and 81% of Republicans in this country do not have one good friend who is a Democrat. The article culminated with a really interesting observation. The article shared back that because of politics in the year 2025, we might actually be more socially distanced from one another than when we were living out 2020, dealing with a destructive virus. Here we are on the day when we celebrate the King who is above all kings, and it can be so hidden from our eyes. If Jesus were to have heard the stories I just shared with you, you know what I think Jesus would do? I think Jesus would weep all over again. But Jesus doesn't have to, insofar as we claim a higher politics, as we claim what it might look like to live under the reign of Christ and to live into a set of kingdom virtues that are truly heaven on earth. One minister many years ago, she talked about it this way with her congregation. She said, can you imagine, just in a visionary or idealistic way, what it would look like for Jesus as king to triumph over all earthly politics? What would come? Respect, civility, conversation, listening, perhaps even love and grace and inclusion. What might happen if Jesus were the king who is above all kings? That term, a higher politics, was one that was introduced to me many years ago when I was at Duke Divinity School in 2004. It was there on Election Tuesday when my ethics professor, a very controversial theologian at the time, he was Time Magazine's Theologian of the Year, his name was Stanley Hauerwas. He was lecturing, and the title of his lecture was Bush, Kerry, or a Higher Politics. And he articulated very powerfully John Howard Yoder's argument that on Palm Sunday, Jesus embodies an alternative politics that the world may very well be hungry for. This does not necessarily mean that we don't vote or engage politics or even actively seek out politics. But what it does suggest, that term, a higher politics, is that there is something bigger if we come to church and use the words King, Prince, and Lord to talk about Jesus. There's something bigger than what's red or blue. There is something bigger than Fox or CNN. There is this King above all kings who might bring forth a kingdom of heaven reality for us that is far more fulfilling than human politics of our day. Just a few weeks ago, I found myself in one of those awkward social situations where politics and religion did come up. And there was an older gentleman there, and he knew I was a minister, and he said, you know what, you're a minister, you're no fun. And then his next comment was, you know, as a minister, you have to walk around all day being a dynamic moderate. And I thought to myself, is that really what my vocation reduces me to? That I walk around all day being a dynamic moderate? But I thought about Jesus and the kind of kingdom of heaven politics that is part of the witness of this church, and it was very, very powerful for me. I thought about politics that supports refugee families, politics that sends Stephen ministers into relationships with people who are grieving, politics that's open and affirming you are included and supported no matter what. Politics that says, I'm going to bring my cans in for communion and be concerned about affordable housing. And I got to be thinking about a little bit of that kingdom of heaven on earth. And I said, you know what? This isn't moderate. This is magnificent. And you say, well, still, preacher, isn't this just so much of a dream, just kind of foolishly idealistic? And my response back to you was that Paul said it would be, that even the foolishness of God is wiser than human wisdom. On this Palm Sunday, don't let the politicians and politics of this world hide your eyes from that King who is above all kings, who brings forth the kingdom of heaven on earth, a kingdom that is undergirded by a set of virtues that includes peace, love, grace, service. Don't let your eyes be hidden, for that kingdom truly is out of this world. But still, if you're not convinced, if you don't believe that this king who comes into Jerusalem riding on a donkey has more to offer than Pilate, Caesar, Herod, and all the kings, queens, and politicians of our world, well then, I dare you to come back next Sunday